I recently started flying this Aerojet Dragon 3D from Global Jet Club, and I've gotten a bunch of messages asking my thoughts about it and setup questions, so I thought I would just make a video about it. Keep in mind that this is the only jet I've flown with thrust vector so far, and I only have about 12 flights on it. So I'm sure things will change over time and the flying will improve with additional experience. Let's start talking about the airframe. The Dragon 3D is based on the Hummingbird sports jet. It's meant to be an entry-level sports jet with 3D capability at an affordable cost. It has a 63-inch wingspan and a length of 71 inches. Starting in the front, we have dual 3-cell 2200 mAh LiPo batteries that go into this FrSky RB35 redundancy board, which is hooked up to these two FrSky TDR6 receivers. Each of these receivers are dual-band tandem using 2.4 GHz and 900 MHz. From each receiver, we have S-bus coming into the Cortex Pro. The Cortex Pro then outputs the respective S-bus signals into the RB35. Additionally, we have the F-bus outputs on each receiver connected to the RX3 port in the RB35 in order to get full telemetry communication between the RB35 and the receivers. Besides this, we have the JP retracts and an AG63 gyro to control brakes and steering. I was initially skeptical about the braking and steering gyro because I don't like the idea of having something getting in the way of my inputs, but after testing it, I have to say it has worked surprisingly well during takeoffs and landings, and does a great job keeping the plane straight during acceleration and braking. For servos, we're using all FrSky servos. We have a 5300 series mini servo for steering and the 5405H across all flight surfaces and thrust vector. These are a bit overkill for this plane, but they're really strong, precise and affordable. Onto the turbine. This plane would fly great with just the 80 or 100 size turbine, but in this Dragon we're using a Xicoy X120, as we wanted to explore the possibility of high alpha flying and hovers. Additionally, I'm using a Avionics RDT unit to get the turbine telemetry from Xicoy into the FrSky system. Now, a common question I get asked is about the thrust-weight ratio of this model, and if it will hover. Let's look at the numbers. The weight of the plane with a full UAT and empty tanks is 21.1 pounds, or 9.6 kilograms. In this plane, we're using both of the included tanks for fuel, for a total of 2.8 liters of diesel. That makes the total weight of this plane with full tanks 11.9 kilograms. This means that with full tanks, we're at a 1-to-1 thrust-to-weight ratio, while with a 30% reserve fuel would be at 1.15 to 1. Basically, we need to wait towards the end of the flight to attempt maneuvers like high alpha flying and hovers. I think that the 140 would be the way to go for 3D with this plane, in order to get a better thrust-to-weight ratio. Additionally, for harriers and hovers, I would also try to keep things a bit lighter. For example, we could remove the RB35 and the Cortex Pro, and use instead a TDMX backup receiver with a TD-SR18 as the primary, which would take care of the battery redundancy and the gyro. Looking at the radio setup, I basically use 4 switches on my X20S transmitter. I have a switch for the landing gear, a switch for turning off the gyro in case of emergency, and then I have a 3-position switch for the flap configurations, normal, takeoff and landing. Each flap position activates a separate flight mode. All trims are shared between all the flight modes, with the exception of the elevator, which is specific to each flight mode, as different flap settings require different elevator trims to get the level flight right. Then I use a 3-position switch to modify dual rates and gyro gains. First, thrust vector off with small flight surface deflections. This is what I use most of the time for aerobatic flying. Second, thrust vector on with just a little bit of movement, and the same small deflections on flight surfaces. This is something I've been playing with to reduce the space turns and loops take. It lets you slide the tail a little bit. And third, this is the 3D mode. Full deflections on thrust vector and flight surfaces. Going through all the degrees and expo numbers will take too long, so I will just paste my radio setup here in the table, and if you're interested you can pause the video and take a look at the details. In terms of flight characteristics, it does pretty well for sports flying. The airplane is small and relatively fast. The Xicoy 120 has obviously plenty of power for any high-speed aerobatics. Knife edge has some roll coupling, but it's not hard to correct either by hand or with a mix. And there is good rudder authority to easily maintain altitude even without the use of thrust vector. Slow rolls, point rolls and even rifle rolls are not an issue. Actually, after the initial flight I had to remove some aileron deflection because the roll rate was a bit too fast for me. The Dragon handles comfortably in a slow flight with the flaps down, and all my landings have felt very easy, But keep in mind that this is a small plane that won't like to get as slow as the bigger sports jets do. The thrust vector is more effective than I initially anticipated. Tumbles can be plenty aggressive if you have full deflection and 50% or more thrust. Flat spins are easy to control with the use of thrust vector. The rotation is quick to stop after neutralizing the rudder, but you want to have plenty of room below the plane to regain its speed and resume normal flight. During Harriers, the wings can get a good amount of wing rock, unless the nose is close to the vertical, and in that case I need to apply close to full power to maintain altitude. Currently, I'm working on getting more comfortable flying in high alpha at a lower altitude with the Dragon, which for me is a requirement to properly test the hovers. Even though I'm very comfortable doing these maneuvers with propeller planes, doing Harriers with jets still feel a bit scary to me, because of how much additional space they need to recover from a bad situation. As I make more progress on 3D flying with the Dragon, I'll make sure to make some update videos. Until then, thanks for watching!